He said Zainab alayhi salam would have spent about between 5 and 6 years with the Holy Prophet, and if you remember your history, that's also the year that Fatima al-Zahra also passed away, not that long after the Holy Prophet. Between 30 days to 90 days after the Holy Prophet was the death of Fatima al-Zahra alayhi salam. During that time, one incident happened that is perhaps worth mentioning, and that's the famous sermon. Fatima al-Zahra gave more than one sermon, but one of them is the most famous sermon called the Khutbah al-Fadakiyya, the Fadaki sermon, in which she went to the mosque of the Holy Prophet and spoke at length. She gave a very complex, sophisticated, eloquent sermon about her rights and how her rights have been taken from her, the inheritance left to her from the Holy Prophet. The interesting part about this, and I don't want to talk too much about the sermon itself, the interesting part about the sermon is that I'm going to talk about it from two different angles. The first one is the traditional angle, the religious angle, with the position of Ibn Abbas being the position of Ibn Abbas in Islam. Okay, Ibn Abbas is a well-respected scholar, companion of the Holy Prophet, well-respected as one of the greatest mufassirin, interpreters of the Holy Quran, right from the beginning of Islam and onward. When he talks about the sermon of Fatima al-Zahra alayhi salam, his chain of narration stops at Zainab al-Kubra, at Zainab alayhi salam. That's from one angle. So if we want to look at it from the religious, classic, traditional lineage of the way we approach our reports, our Islamic reports, our ruwayat, our narrations and reports, with the chain of narrators through Ibn Abbas of the khutbah, the sermon of Fatima al-Zahra about Fadak, actually went through Zainab. So Ibn Abbas reports from Zainab alayhi salam. That's one. And the other one from Arabic rhetoric and eloquence. There's a very famous book, Balaghat al-Nisa, that talks about the eloquent sermons and poetry that was said, that was recited by famous women throughout the Arabic or Arab history. And one of them is the sermon of Fatima al-Zahra alayhi salam. And again, they say that it was reported through her daughter Zainab. The interesting part, however, is that for someone to memorize the sermon, it does take a very, very strong memory capacity. The sermon itself is not short. It's not a very long sermon, but it is a longer sermon. It's highly complex. It's extremely eloquent. And the topics that it addresses are very varied. It's not like it's one topic where the flow is very logical. There is a logic to it. But it talks about the prehistory, or let's call it the history of the Arabs before Islam. And then it talks about the Holy Prophet being sent to them as a messenger. It talks about a lot of the rituals of Islam and the philosophy behind them. And then Zahra, peace upon her, starts using the Holy Quran, verses of the Holy Quran, to argue for her inheritance by using specific verses of the Quran. And it's a very complex sermon for a child between 4 or 5, around that age, to learn it in that manner requires a very strong intellectual capacity. And when people like Ibn Abbas are relying on her report, it's not nothing. That's a very significant matter. So something to keep in mind, because I think we all hear about how Zainab alayhi salam, there are many stories about her intelligence, her intellectual capacity from a young age. I think this one is, for looking at it from a very historical point of view, there are foundations and there are scientific works based on this, and no one has ever disputed this.